The shocking image of a drowned toddler prompts calls across Europe for action on the refugee crisis. Aylan Kurdi's father lost his entire family fleeing Syria's conflict. Pressure increases on EU leaders to respond.
This particular picture may, after so many deaths, shock people into a sense of who we are and what we should be.
Fennelly fallout continues. Now the focus is on the disposal of documents and a SIM card as the Garda Commissioner departed.
I have very significant concerns about An Garda Síochána, and I think, given everything that has come to light in the last few years, how could one not have concerns?
Serious allegations. The Stormont Committee begins to examine the sale of NAMA's Northern Ireland portfolio.
There was an ingrained culture of inappropriate and quite possibly illegal business conduct.
Pointing in a different direction, a new CAO system changes what each Leaving Cert grade is worth.
Good evening and welcome to 6-1. 4 suspected people traffickers have been arrested in Turkey in connection with the deaths of 12 Syrian refugees who drowned while trying to reach mainland Europe. Among the dead was 3-year-old Aylan Kurdi, whose tiny body was photographed washed up on a Turkish beach. His death is putting further pressure on European countries to do more to tackle the refugee crisis. In a moment, we'll hear from our Europe editor, Tony Connolly. But first, Carol Coleman reports on the Kurdi family and how their plight has become a symbol of this international crisis. Viewers may find some of the images in her report distressing.
3-year-old Aylan Kurdi and his 5-year-old brother Galip in happier times. Their young lives were scarred by war and their parents need to find them a better life. That came to a sad end yesterday, their small bodies washed up on a Turkish beach, along with that of their mother. Today their father, Abdullah, the only survivor, spoke about what happened.
We went on the journey. The sea was very wavy and the waves were very high and strong. As the wave hit the boat, we tried to stay on board. When the second wave hit the boat, we were all thrown off. I tried to hold my children and my wife. They all died one by one.
According to the boys' aunt, Tima Kurdi in Vancouver, quoted in Canadian newspapers, the family had earlier tried to get to Canada. They fled Kobani, the northern Syrian town overrun by Islamic State. In Turkey, they applied for Canadian asylum but were rejected. Their next plan, to travel from Bodrum to Kos. Early yesterday, Abdullah, his wife and the boys got into a vessel near the tourist resort of Bodrum. They were planning to join the crowds travelling westward from Greece through Macedonia, Hungary and beyond. Instead, their quest for a better, safer life for their boys ended in tragedy.
Every morning they would call me saying Papa from the garden, but they are gone now. I only want to bury my wife and children and be at peace.
The image of Aylan's lifeless body has sparked worldwide reaction to the refugee crisis.
Like everyone that looked at that image of that young Syrian child on the paper today, you think of your own 5-year-old child, and I've seen the conditions they're living in Syria, and they've been there for 4 years, and I know as a father how hard it must have been for that man to step onto that boat with his family, but that's because what they're leaving is no better.
As the search for a political solution goes on, 4 suspected traffickers were arrested in Turkey today in connection with the drownings. Carol Coleman, RTE News.
The Taoiseach said Ireland would be flexible on taking in more refugees from Italy and Greece if asked at a key meeting of EU Justice Ministers next Monday. Enda Kenny was speaking in Paris following a meeting with the French President François Hollande. Ireland has already committed to helping 600 migrants over the next 2 years.
This was the first bilateral meeting between the Taoiseach and the French President since 2012 and was scheduled since before the summer, when few could have imagined the depths of the migration crisis confronting Europe. European leaders have long feared popular anti-immigrant sentiment, but they've been shaken by the images of Aylan Kurdi, the young boy washed up on a beach in Turkey, and the subsequent shift in public opinion.
Is there anybody on the planet who could not be moved by what they saw in the papers today? Anybody with a sense of humanity? See the body of a young boy washed up on a beach like driftwood.
But the big division remains on how many refugees each country should take. France has been reluctant to talk about quotas, but today the French president said a permanent and mandatory system was needed for what he called the fair distribution of refugees. Ireland has an opt-out from some EU rules on asylum, but the government has offered to take 600 refugees. The Taoiseach suggested Ireland could take more.
I did say to the Minister for Justice, Francis Fitzgerald, to go to the meeting with a flexible mind here, and we've got to be realistic in what we can contribute.
But the crisis is continuing to stretch the authorities in a number of countries. Hungarian police have operated a confusing on-again, off-again attitude to refugees being allowed to take trains to Germany. Today they were crammed on board, but then outside Budapest, police forced them to disembark to send them to a nearby camp. At one point, a dozen police moved in to remove a man who'd lain on the tracks with his wife and toddler in protest. In Brussels, the Hungarian Prime Minister, who's come under fire for building a fence to keep migrants out, said there was more morality in asking them not to come to Europe.
The moral human thing is to make clear, please don't come. Why you have to go from Turkey to Europe? Turkey is a safe country. Stay there. It's risky to come. We can't guarantee that you will be accepted here. So morally and from human point of view, we who defend the border and keep the regulations, we represent a human moral point also.
Next week, the European Commission will set out the kind of binding refugee quotas that could start to alleviate the burden of frontline states. But it's by no means clear if member states are still haunted by the image of a dead toddler on a beach.
Well, shortly before coming on air, I spoke to Tony about those refugee quotas. He began by breaking down the numbers.
Well, Sharon, there are a couple of elements that Ireland is looking at the moment. First of all, there's the United Nations resettlement programme, and that means taking Syrian refugees from outside the country in camps in places like Turkey and Jordan and bringing them to Ireland. Now, the government has committed to taking 520 such refugees over the next 2 years. The other element is a relocation process whereby refugees who've already come into the European Union, into countries like Greece and Italy, would be relocated to other countries in the European Union. Now, they tried to introduce an obligatory, mandatory system back in May, but in June many EU leaders rejected that idea. It was simply too sensitive. But nonetheless, there is a voluntary move since then to have about 40,000 migrants relocated from those two countries, Greece and Italy. The government has signed up to taking in 600, but since the crisis really reached epic proportions in the past couple of weeks, we are now looking at a number of 100,000 migrants that will be taken again from Greece and Italy to other countries. So that is what they're going to discuss at the meeting of EU Justice Ministers next Monday. And Ireland has signalled that it will take more. And that the actual number will depend very much on a number of criteria which will have to be worked out. And don't forget, because Ireland has to opt into this system because we have an opt-out on EU asylum policy, then statistically it's not clear yet how many exactly Ireland would have to take in.
So that figure yet to be determined. But it seems, Tony, that we're really witnessing a ratcheting up of tensions, looking at those scenes in Hungary today, and also a ratcheting up of emotion, a really, really powerful reaction to the death of that young Syrian boy, little Aylan Kurdi.
That's right. I mean, the fact remains that many hundreds of children have already died, and yet it has taken this one shocking, iconic image of that little boy on the beach, something about his posture, something about the reaction and the emotion that it has struck into the hearts of everyone, be they politicians or ordinary people, that this has been something of a transformative moment, and I think we are seeing the greatest reaction, the greatest pressure from this image in the United Kingdom, because it has really exposed David Cameron in a sense, because he has taken quite a hard line on migration, on immigration, and he is now under tremendous pressure from public opinion, also from the opposition in the UK, to take perhaps a more compassionate standpoint on this crisis. But it has once again perhaps shamed politicians and leaders into a greater sense of urgency than they've already had to date.
Tony Connolly in Paris, thank you.
Well, here the debate has intensified as to whether Ireland is doing enough to help those caught up in the refugee crisis. Our reporter Conor Hunt has been speaking to people on different sides of the argument.
For a long time, the Al-Quran family lived a comfortable life in Syria. Well educated, they had good jobs. In 2013, though, the violence in Aleppo proved too much.
Kids killed every day, kidnapping. One day I have decided to flee the country.
Now, watching events like the drowning of the 3-year-old boy unfold is heartbreaking, they say.
To drown without any ID and to be thrown at a beach, it's very devastating for me.
Today, the debate about whether Ireland is doing enough continued. The Archbishop of Dublin said we should be taking in more refugees.
I would say go beyond in quantity and quality. Quantity in the sense that the numbers can be more, but we must also ensure that the people that come are received in a way that's worthy of them.
Others, though, disagree.
They are coming because we're giving the message that they'll be let in. The message must be sent, we're not letting you in.
Opinion too is divided, it seems, among the members of the public we spoke to.
So I think with the amount of people that's in this country that's actually homeless at the moment, and the refugees are just piling in, there's too many of them coming in.
We probably can't afford it financially, but we'd have to squeeze them in somewhere along the line. You know, it has to be done. Someone has to care for them, and that's it.
I know there's a crisis, but I think they should go to elsewhere.
Need to be looking at a different viewpoint, like thinking that what can they bring to our country as well, you know. But yeah, overall I think we should just take in more.
Back at the Al-Quran family home, 12-year-old Tartil has a message for the government.
Help more people to come here to Ireland, children and family.
For now, the family anxiously watch from afar. Conor Hunt, RTE News.
Still to come on tonight, 6-1, the banking inquiry hears about a private meeting between Anglo chairman Sean Fitzpatrick and former Taoiseach Bryan in July 2008.
And coming up in sport, Cian Healy absent again as Ireland prepare for Twickenham's showdown against England, and the ups and that very memorable down. Donncha O'Callaghan reflects on his long Munster career. And Faroe Hills are greener. The Republic of Ireland fans familiarise themselves with the Algarve ahead of tomorrow's game against Gibraltar.
As the fallout from the Fennelly report continues, the Renua leader Lucinda Creighton and independent TD Shane Ross have both raised concerns about the shredding of personal documents belonging to the former Garda Commissioner following his retirement last year. The report also revealed a mobile phone SIM card couldn't be located. Deputy Creighton said she plans to contact the Gardaí about her concerns.
Another day and more questions about the findings of the Fennelly report. This time they centre on the shredding of 8 to 10 bags of personal papers belonging to the former Garda Commissioner Martin Callanan after he stood down. Questions too about the location of the SIM card from his phone.
The matter of shredding should be left to Judge Fennelly and his Commission of Investigation. That's very important. He's going to have to complete his work, but this is a question which must be answered.
I have very significant concerns about An Garda Síochána, and I think, given everything that has come to light in the last few years, how could one not have concerns?
The Gardaí and the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner were also asked about the issue today. A spokesman for the Data Protection Commission office said they had no comment to make, while a spokesman for the Gardaí said they had no comment at present, but were examining the Fennelly report in detail and any issues relating to the Gardaí would be addressed. The spokesman added that the Commissioner has appointed an Assistant Commissioner to review the report's findings. Meanwhile, a spokesman for the Garda Representative Association said they were still carefully considering the report, but they still believe there was political interference in Martin Callanan's departure, and there was no evidence found to suggest otherwise. Today also saw a series of ministers come out in support of the Attorney-General after a Sinn Féin decision to table a motion of no confidence in her.
Yes, I have full confidence in her, as I know the Taoiseach and Taoiseach and all the members of the government have. She's an extremely expert and assiduous lawyer, and I think she acted at all times properly.
The Fennelly report is due to report back on the recordings of calls to and from Garda stations at the end of the year. Martina Fitzgerald, RT News.
The banking inquiry has heard that a private meeting between Anglo chairman Sean Fitzpatrick and the then Taoiseach Bryan was held at the home of one of its directors in July 2008. Non-executive director Gary McGann said the discussion in Fintan Drury's house, which he also attended, concentrated on the economy and not the bank.
Anglo Day at the banking inquiry, but its top managers and ultimate decision makers were conspicuously absent. Instead, two former executives and one non-executive director, Gary McGann, gave evidence. The well-known business figure said he had thought the bank was properly run. He also revealed that the infamous golf game at Druids Glen in July 2008 between then Taoiseach Bryan Cowan and Sean Fitzpatrick was preceded by a meeting at Fintan Drury's home.
Why didn't you discuss banking?
Because it wasn't on the agenda.
So what was on the agenda?
General economic developments and what the likely challenges would be.
Later it was the turn of former Chief Financial Officer Matt Moran. He has been granted immunity in return for giving evidence for the state in Anglo trials. He was asked about conversations he had in 2008 with then Leader of the Opposition, Enda Kenny.
But he did have a conversation with you in which he informed you that Anglo was to be an offshoot of Bank of Ireland.
I think the context of the comment was, listen, there's noise around here that you're going to be bought by this one, bought by that one.
Earlier, more evidence from Anglo's former head of Treasury, Peter Fitzgerald. He said they knew the game was up in 2008. The inquiry is continuing with an examination of Irish Life and Permanent. Sandra Hurley, RTE News, Leinster House.
Well, let's stay with the inquiry and talk to our business editor, David Murphy, who joins us now. David, this evidence today from former Anglo executive Matt Moran suggesting some conflict of evidence when compared with what Mr Kenny had to say about some of these events, what the Taoiseach had to say.
Yeah, Matt Moran is from Castlebar, the same town as the Taoiseach, and he had a number of contacts with the Taoiseach in late 2008 when Enda Kenny was then head of the opposition. And in those contacts, discussions revolved around what the then government's plans were for Anglo-Irish Bank, and they discussed the possibility of Anglo being merged with another institution. And Matt Moran reported the contents of those discussions to David Drum, who was then head of Anglo. All of this has been reported in the media, but those reports were put to Enda Kenny and he denied them. However, today, Mr Moran, when he was asked about those contacts, he confirmed them. So that really means there's a discrepancy of evidence which is before the inquiry, but it is something that goes back some years, and it's only one of quite a number of discrepancies in evidence which the inquiry is going to have to iron out in its final report.
Well, now, David, we know separately there are a number of court actions in relation to former figures in Anglo-Irish Bank. To what extent has all of that constrained the inquiry in its investigations today and in this particular aspect of its investigation?
Well, really today should have been the day for the inquiry, in the sense that they're now dealing with Anglo, which is the bank which cost more than any other bank in the state. Yesterday they were dealing with Nationwide, which also cost an awful lot of money. And the inquiry has been criticised for being toothless, and when you listen to the evidence today and the interaction, what you found was that certainly that criticism, there is merit to it, because what is going on is that the people who are giving evidence are being stopped from saying exactly what they want to say, and also the members of the inquiry are being stopped in terms of all the questions they want to ask because of the continuing court cases. The other option for the inquiry would really be to hold off until such time as all those court cases had actually concluded. But that would be another 2 years, and it'd possibly be a decade after the events before they could get stuck into it. So I think that's why many people feel what's going on at the inquiry is quite unsatisfactory.
David Murphy, there we leave it. Thank you.
A Northern Ireland property developer has made a series of controversial allegations about the behaviour of Cerberus, the US company that bought the NAMA Northern Ireland property book. Gareth Graham gave his evidence to the Stormont Committee that is inquiring into the sale.
Gareth Graham is a member of the well-known Graham bookmakers family. They're also property developers. He is taking a legal action against the American company Cerberus. It got hold of some of their assets when it bought NAMA's Northern Ireland property portfolio last year. Gareth Graham also has issues with Frank Cushnahan, a businessman who served on NAMA's Northern Ireland Advisory Board. For a number of years, Frank Cushnahan had an office in Graham's because he was chairman of some of their companies. When they parted company in autumn 2008, it wasn't amicable. For regulatory purposes, calls made in and out of here were taped. The recordings include Frank Cushnahan's conversations.
Having listened to hundreds of hours of recordings, with still more to consider, it is quite clear to me now that there was an ingrained culture of inappropriate and quite possibly illegal business conduct which stretches across political, legal, banking and accountancy sectors. I have spoken with the National Crime Agency and have also contacted and await confirmation of a date to make a complaint to the PSNI in relation to criminal offences which I consider have been committed.
These are serious allegations, but their validity or otherwise has still to be established. Frank Cushnahan's position is he has done nothing wrong. Tommy Gorman, RTE News, Belfast.
Let's cross back to Tommy now, because there have been developments this evening related to the political impasse in the Northern Executive. Tommy, tell us more.
A statement issued by the Taoiseach and by the British Prime Minister David Cameron confirming they're inviting all the 5 parties who were involved in the Stormont House negotiations last year, so I take that to include the Ulster Unionists as well. They're inviting them to talks to start early next week. My understanding is that could be a Tuesday start date. The talks will be chaired by Theresa Villiers, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and where appropriate, Charlie Flanagan will have a co-chairing role in matters related to Ireland's, I suppose, function as a co-guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement. Could be a scratchy beginning, Sharon, because the DUP was looking to have Stormont suspended while such talks would take place. It couldn't get support for that from the other parties. It asked David Cameron to suspend the Assembly. It doesn't look like he's going to do that. So there may be some go-slow movement by the DUP in terms of Assembly business. So let's see if all the 5 parties will sign up to taking part in those negotiations. But in every sense, this is probably the last chance they'll have to save power sharing.
Tommy Gorman in Belfast, thank you.
A new CAO points system is being rolled out for students starting college in 2017. The Minister for Education, Jan O'Sullivan, said it will change the way third-level places are allocated and should ease the pressure on students.
The points system, as we've known it, now its days are numbered. For students who've just entered 5th year, a new Leaving Certificate grading system has already been announced. A's, B's and C's are to be replaced by a new scale from H1 to H8. This new points system complements that. A H1 is worth 100 points, a H2 88 points, and so on. These irregular increments may make it more difficult to calculate your points, but they'll ensure far fewer students get exactly the same overall score.
It's fairer in the sense that there will be far fewer students now getting into the random selection space, whereby you get exactly the same points as another student, but you don't get into the course that student gets into.
Those behind the changes say students shouldn't worry about moving to the new system.
Under the current system, if 6 higher Cs got you in, it is likely that the equivalent under the new scheme will get you in as well.
For the first time, students who score between 30 and 39% in a higher level paper will be awarded points. This score is the equivalent of a B at ordinary level, and that's always attracted points. This change is being made to encourage students to opt for higher level papers. Meanwhile, referring to this year's crisis in student accommodation, the Minister said she supported measures to encourage householders to rent rooms.
The other thing I've done immediately is to support the Union of Students in Ireland in their rent-a-room scheme. I've allocated funding to assist them in that regard, in their website, in disseminating information and in encouraging anybody who has a spare room to provide that for students.
Emma O'Kelly, RTE News.
Now, there we take a break, but still to come on tonight 6-1, more on the refugee crisis.
And sweetening the pill, could new talks on drug pricing reduce costs?
Hello again, you're watching 6-1, the main news again this evening. 4 suspected people traffickers have been arrested in Turkey in connection with the deaths of 12 Syrian refugees who drowned while trying to reach Europe. Among the dead was 3-year-old Aylan Kurdi, whose tragic drowning has come to symbolise the crisis and increase pressure on European leaders to act on the situation.
Talks on a new drug pricing agreement between the HSE and the pharmaceutical industry are to begin shortly. A successful outcome could result in millions of euro in savings to the state. The industry said it will table a scheme to make new drugs available faster and at more affordable prices.
The health service spends over €2 billion a year on medicines. The existing 3-year drug price agreement ends next month, and talks between the pharmaceutical industry and the state on a successor deal are about to begin. The pharmaceutical industry says it will propose a new scheme to ensure faster access for Irish patients to new medicines.
So what we want to do is to put on the table for the Minister a scheme whereby patients get access to the drugs first, and the wrangling over the price and the system for price setting and the budget is done, but not in a way that delays access for patients.
The centre, which advises the HSE on the cost effectiveness of drugs, says the state is still paying too much for some medicines.
The industry want to sell their products, the new medicines, which are sometimes quite expensive, and yet the department, while wanting to ensure that patients get access to these new medicines, also has to be cognizant of the value for money and the cost effectiveness of these therapies.
The Department of Health says that the existing 3-year drug price agreement has delivered savings of over €400 million. And while signing a new deal is one option, the department said another possibility is to use legislation to cut drug prices. The pharmaceutical industry has faced criticism recently for the price sought by some drug companies for new high-tech medicines. Some good news today with the decision of the HSE to fund the drug Fampira for certain people with multiple sclerosis. Up to now, people have been paying up to €500 a month for the drug, which can help mobility in some people with MS. Fergal Bowers, RTE News.
Now more of today's news from some of our reporters and correspondents.
An army bomb disposal team is dealing with a suspect device discovered in Dundalk during the ongoing search for Ciara Breen, missing from her home in the town since 1997. Members of the Defence Forces taking part in the search in Balmer's Bog made the discovery this afternoon. Gardaí have been searching the area for 3 weeks after new information about the missing teenager was provided following a public appeal. 61 soldiers took part in the search.
Ryanair has announced plans to fly from Dublin to Amsterdam from the end of October. It's also increasing flight frequency on 14 existing routes to and from Dublin. With passenger numbers up by 15% at Dublin Airport this year, Minister for Transport Paschal Donoghue said he expects a second parallel runway will be needed at the capital's airport.
A new state-owned facility providing community and step-down beds on the site of the former Mount Carmel Private Hospital in South Dublin has been officially opened by Minister of State Kathleen Lynch. Mount Carmel Community Hospital provides services for older people. It has 65 beds and supports the 6 major acute hospitals in Dublin.
Coming up, sky's the limit. Aer Lingus seeks to recruit more female pilots.
I would obviously encourage any young women that want to get into the profession to do so.
In sports news, Ireland's rugby team to face England is named. Cian Healy is absent again and ready to evoke memories of '88. Galway go into Sunday's All-Ireland showdown against Kilkenny, aiming to bridge a 27-year gap.
And here in Portugal, as the Republic of Ireland prepare for the European Championship qualifier against Gibraltar, we're with the fans who've turned this trip into an Algarve holiday.
Again, you're very welcome back. The main news again this evening. 4 suspected people traffickers have been arrested in Turkey in connection with the deaths of 12 Syrian refugees who drowned while trying to reach Europe. Among the dead was 3-year-old Aylan Kurdi, whose tragic drowning has put further pressure on European countries to do more to tackle the migrant crisis.
The Renua leader Lucinda Crichton has said she plans to contact the Gardaí in connection with details revealed in the Fennelly report. Deputy Crichton and Independent TD Shane Ross have both raised concerns about the shredding of personal documents belonging to former Garda Commissioner Martin Callanan after he stood down last year.
Now, new pilots are being recruited by Aer Lingus, who say they want to see an increase in the number of women applicants. 10% of the company's pilots are female, but since 2011, only 5 have joined the ranks.
Curtin Andrew, my 2H, I'm on 153.
2 airline pilots on the flight deck of an Airbus, prepared for any emergency.
Engine 1 fire, push button.
Staying clear of other jets.
Climb.
Or any unexpected event.
Terrain. Pull up.
Making sure everyone arrives safely. But this all-female crew on tonight's training simulator remains uncommon in an industry still very male-dominated. Something Aer Lingus wants to see changing in the years ahead, with the backing of their latest graduates from flight school.
I got into flying several years ago and I started taking private lessons, and then I was lucky enough to get the cadetship. I would obviously encourage any young women that want to get into the profession to do so.
I'm flying the Airbus A320. We also fly the 319 and the 321. Slight differences between them, but not a whole lot. We're flying all around Europe and into airports such as Heathrow, Frankfurt, Paris, so it's pretty amazing.
Today's pilots train in facilities like these, and the lucky 12 chosen by Aer Lingus will begin their training here too. The difference between them and other trainees is that to be a pilot costs up to €100,000 these days. Aer Lingus will fully fund all of that, and their pilots will qualify to fly the real thing.
We have recruited approximately 60 cadets so far since the training programme started back in 2012 again. So there are tremendous opportunities for pilots in Aer Lingus. They can transition on. Initially they'll enter the airline as first officers on the Airbus 320.
Aer Lingus is hoping an equal number of men and women will wish to fly their planes, but warn only the very best will get to take these seats and make it to the finish line. Recruitment starts now. Ray Kennedy, RTE News.
Now time for our sport this evening. Here's Eamon.
Thanks very much, Brian. Well, Cian Healy is absent again from the Ireland squad for Saturday's World Cup warm-up game against England. Twickenham Joe Schmidt today named his team for what, of course, will be the final game before the big tournament kicks off.
Finally revealing his hand. With just over 2 weeks to go to the World Cup, Joe Schmidt has released the big guns in what's close to a full-strength team to play England on Saturday. Simon Zebo comes in at full-back for Rob Kearney, while there's no place as yet for Cian Healy, who is making progress in his fight for fitness.
He could have played this week, and it wasn't that he wasn't physically fit to play, it was that he probably just hadn't done enough team runs, and there's no point in putting him out there if he's out of kilter and he's out of sync, and it's not a place where you go to give game time for game time's sake.
Dave Kearney and Bowe complete the back three. Payne and Henshaw take up the centre, with Murray and Sexton at half-back. McGrath, Best and Ross come into the front row, with Toner and Captain O'Connell behind them, and O'Mahony, O'Brien and Heaslip in the back row. After defeat to Wales last time out, there's plenty at stake on Saturday.
When you play England, it's not a warm-up game, is it? It's going to be a full-on test. They're obviously coming off a bit of pressure from losing against France as well, and there's been a bit of chat that they're going to come out firing.
So apart from Cian Healy, it looks like a full-strength team from Joe Schmidt. And with the old enemy on the horizon, it feels now like Ireland's World Cup build-up begins in earnest. Paul O'Flynn, RTE News, with the Ireland rugby team at Carton House.
We got confirmation today of Donncha O'Callaghan's exit from Munster. The province's most capped player has joined English Premiership side Worcester on a 2-year contract.
After 17 trophy-laden years in Munster Red, Donncha O'Callaghan is finally moving on. The Corkman was contracted with the province till next summer, but the chance of greater playing opportunities means he'll instead spend the next 2 years at Worcester in the English Premiership.
I suppose I make no bones about saying the last kind of year has been frustrating, not getting a whole lot of game time, and I've been absolutely lucky that both Munster, the RFU and Worcester have come together and worked together in providing me a platform to play.
O'Callaghan's made 268 Munster appearances, winning 2 Heineken Cups as well as 3 league titles. He's made 94 Irish appearances, winning 3 Triple Crowns and a Grand Slam. The hunger to play, though, is still there.
I'll be honest with you, Joe, it's the shot clock for me. I am 36 years of age. I mightn't have a whole lot of rugby left, and I want to play in that time. And you know what I mean, just sitting and watching the games and maybe having bit parts in them isn't me. I want to compete, I want to play. I suppose the biggest thing for me is to kind of get across how thankful I am, in particularly to the Munster and Irish supporters. I've lived my dream with it. It's been incredible, and I've loved it, and I'm grateful.
The Loch's longevity is testament to his unwavering professionalism. Yet one incident still plagues him. 2006 and those red pants. It's a moment he's never been allowed forget.
It's the bit that people kind of grab onto, and you're there. Please don't let that be the highlight of my career, you know what I mean?
Donncha will be 38 when his new contract at Worcester ends, but don't be surprised if even then the Corkman still feels he's more to offer the game he loves. Joe Stack, RTE News, Cork.
Republic of Ireland fans have begun to arrive in the Algarve ahead of tomorrow's Euro qualifier against Gibraltar. Martin O'Neill's side are overwhelming favourites to record a win against the Group D minnows, so the travelling fans, as you might expect, are in an upbeat mood.
This is the luxury 5-star hotel on the Algarve where the Republic of Ireland squad is based, but they won't be here for long. Martin O'Neill's men will just have one night in Portugal. Following the game against Gibraltar, they'll head straight back to Dublin. Their mission is clear: collect 3 points on Friday and prepare for the second game of the doubleheader against Georgia on Monday. For the fans, though, a game against the Group Minnows is a great opportunity to combine a holiday with support for the boys in green.
Huge crowd here, all down along the coast. A lot of guys came and made a holiday for the week. We're here for 3 or 4 days. Looking forward to the sunshine. It's a bit better than the summer we had back home. And maybe for the turf cut here, it'll be a lot easier to save it.
It's a pivotal weekend in Group D, and results in the other games could seal Ireland's fate by Monday.
Every game is a pressure game now from now on, and we'll be watching the Scotland game as well, see how that goes, and hope that Georgia could do us a favour and bring us back into it again.
If Ireland collects 6 points from the next 2 matches, though, the chances of getting to France and the European Championships are greatly increased.
There's an awful lot of ifs and buts in this group, and there's an awful lot of twists and turns, and it's a minefield of a group, really,
Over 3,000 Irish fans are expected here tomorrow to cheer on Ireland, turning the Estadio Algarve into a virtual home game.
Well, for more on this, let's go live to Faro, where our soccer correspondent Tony O'Donoghue is standing by. Tony, this is a must-win game that the Republic are expected to win, and win easily.
They are expected to win, Eamon, of course, yes, but they can't take it for granted either. Ronnie Whelan was captain of the Republic of Ireland 20 years ago when they played Liechtenstein in a European qualifier. They drew 0-0, the worst result, you could say, against them we've ever had. And a couple of days later, they lost against Austria at home. Ronnie's been talking to Robbie Keane, our captain, of course, just prior to the press conference which went on here a short time ago. And Robbie, remembering that probably, he was urging that we cannot afford to be complacent.
All week the players and the manager and the coaching staff
has reminded the players, which we certainly don't need it, because we know that every game is always difficult. And if you look in the cups in England, there's always an upset somewhere. So we have to make sure that's not us. We have to approach the game in a positive way from the very, very start, and make sure that we're ready to get the 3 points, and be wary of a team that we've been watching videos of them all week. It's counter-attacking, can cause a few problems. So we have to be very, very clever and very wary.
Well, you can't afford to get too far ahead of yourselves. The team training behind closed doors indeed at the moment. Preparation has been good. They simply have to beat Gibraltar, and then they have to beat Georgia on Monday as well, and that puts us hopefully in a better position in the group.
Thanks, Tony. We'll leave it there. Now, Dublin's Dermot Connolly is poised to bring his case to the Central Appeals Committee tonight in a bid to be available for Saturday's All-Ireland semi-final replay against Mayo. Connolly has already lost his appeal, of course, against his proposed one-match suspension for his sending off on Sunday. Failure tonight may prompt the Dubs to bring Connolly's case to the DRA. Now, continuing our countdown to Sunday's All-Ireland hurling final. Galway, of course, are hoping to win the Lee McCarthy Cup for the first time since 1988. Our esteemed Gaelic Games correspondent Marty Morrissey has been gauging the mood in the West.
The people of Galway have been waiting a long time, since 1988 in fact, to enjoy and savour an All-Ireland victory. Ironically enough, many of the Galway hurlers who will play in Sunday's All-Ireland final weren't even born back then, but they are steeped in the Galway GA culture and the passion and skill of the game.
We're just knuckling down to training, and we know we've lots to work on. We're looking at our individual clips from the last day, and we've plenty of areas to work on. And they're fearless, really, and it's just great to see them doing it on championship days in Croke Park, and we know they're capable of that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it just goes down to working harder than your opposition, and the skill will come through, and they'll be able to express themselves on the day.
In 2012, the counties met in the All-Ireland final, which went to a replay. The tribesmen lost that, and over the next 3 years, time has brought many changes.
The squad has changed. There's a massive belief in the camp, and I think that was missing last year. We had a few tough games in the run up to the Tipperary game down in Thurles, and that rattled us. So look, we reset, refocused, and brought it back again. But it's aggressive. We wanted more, and we wanted now more than anything else.
It will be some All-Ireland for Galway to win, considering in their last 2 games they've beaten Cork and Tipperary on their journey to the final.
A lot of people will say you deserve an All-Ireland, but deserving it, doesn't do it really on the day. That doesn't put any ball over the bar for you. It has gone so long since we've won. These guys really are on a mission. But always are Kilkenny as well in the final.
It's 27 years since Galway last won the All-Ireland Hurling Championship. 3 years ago, of course, they lost to Kilkenny in the All-Ireland final, the same opposition they face next Sunday. The question is, can Galway reach new heights on Sunday, September 6th? Marty Morrissey, RT News, Leisureland, Salthill, Galway.
Yeah, right. And that's all your sports news for now. It's all yours again, Bryan.
Thank you indeed, Eamon. Before we go, let's return to our main news tonight, the continuing refugee crisis in Europe, because we're joined on the line now by Jonathan Edgar, who's Chief Operations Officer with the Irish aid agency GOAL. And Jonathan, you're speaking to us by phone on your return, I understand, from the Balkans, where you've had a chance to see firsthand exactly the scale of all this. What have you witnessed?
Well, that's right. I took a journey from the Syrian-Turkish border across Turkey down to the port of Bodrum to follow the route that the refugees are taking from Syria. And once in Bodrum, looking for a ferry across to Kos, where they can actually work, find their way up to Macedonia and west of Austria.
And so what have you encountered there in terms of numbers, the circumstances of these individuals and these families, and I suppose your assessment of their determination to try to get to Europe?
Well, when I arrived in Bodrum, there were 600 refugees arriving at the same time. And talking to them, they basically had one objective, that was to get away from the situation that they're facing currently inside Syria, where they have little access to water, health, sanitation. The refugee camps on the border with Turkey, they did not feel was providing enough of those services. And actually, acutely, they're focusing on the education for their family and for their children. And they said to me that it was actually worth taking the risk of drowning at sea rather than staying inside Syria and dying under the oppressive situation that they're facing under a barrel bomb or other forms of terror. So they actually are striking a deal with organised crime, mafia organisations who are ferrying these people across in the middle of the night, often in the early hours of the morning, to get them a 12-kilometre journey between Bodrum and Kos, a journey which any tourist and your viewers will understand this area is a holiday resort. I took the journey myself. It cost me €20. It's costing the Syrian refugees $1,200 per person. They feel the risk is worth it. And once they're in Kos, they have one objective, and that is to get west of Austria, where they can find a future for themselves. They do not see it in Syria right now. I think the issue is when they get to Kos, actually processing the refugees is proving to be extremely difficult because of the huge numbers. When I was there was 4,000 still unprocessed, 500-600 were arriving per day, and the actual ability of the Greek authorities was to be able to process in the region of 150 to 200 per day, which is leaving a huge backlog. And that creates tension and issues within the areas that they're arriving in.
I was going to ask you, Jonathan, as you know, there's a debate here about taking refugees into this country, indeed across Europe, and Goal, I think, supports the call for a quota system across the European Union. What in terms of numbers do you think, does Goal think Ireland should be looking at in terms of doing, I suppose you would argue, its share?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to get stuck on numbers because, it's very difficult to actually just put a figure on this. As I say, when I arrived in Bodrum alone, 600 refugees arrived with me. And I think the technical language around the Geneva Convention and the semantics of what different EU states should and should not do is not actually valid at this point. I think a common sense approach to dealing with this issue, which frankly could define the political agenda within Europe for the next 5 to 10 years, is what is required. There is a moral responsibility of the EU nations to take this seriously. These are not economic migrants. They are refugees fleeing for their life in terror. They need to be welcomed with open arms at this stage and to be provided with some very basic services so that they can get their lives back together. In addition to that, there is a need for continued investment inside Syria, safe spaces for the aid agencies that are working there, like Goal, on the border with Turkey, improve the refugee status there, and people will not travel. They want to stay in Syria. And at a geopolitical level, this needs to come to an end. The crisis in Syria has not been taken seriously for far too long, and it's time that this stops.
All right, time has caught up with us, but thank you indeed for talking to us. That's Jonathan Edgar from Goal.
And the main news again this evening, 4 suspected people traffickers have been arrested in Turkey in connection with the deaths of 12 Syrian refugees who drowned en route to Europe. Among the dead was 3-year-old Aylan Kurdi, whose tragic image has come to symbolise an unfolding humanitarian crisis, increasing pressure on European leaders to do more to help those seeking refuge.
And you can follow further news updates throughout the evening on the RTE News Now app.
But that is this evening's 6-1 news from everybody on the team. Good night and take care.
Bye for now.